This is where you can find the slides for today. This is short url.at/adgks. I'm sure somewhere in Discord, Rookie has posted the same thing. So feel free to open the slides. It's not a very slide heavy class, if I'm being honest. We'll spend 20 minutes at max revising a few CSS concepts, understanding a little bit how you can write the same CSS in Tailwind, and then we'll dive right into Tailwind. The goal is for it to be a hands-on class, more specifically for us to build a few things in a live assignment that was done by our friend who got hired at Dukan. So we'll basically try to, I don't think we'll be able to do the whole thing in 2 hours, but understand as much of, where is that assignment? Meet submission, or more specifically, what was expected to build something like, come on, where is it? This. So we'll try to style our application purely using Tailwind to build something very close to this. More specifically, we'll understand how you would build elements like these, structure them, position them, if you're using Tailwind as your styling library. Everything you see on this page can actually be built purely using Tailwind. It can be built using pure CSS as well, but we will not write pure CSS. We'll understand the primitives of Tailwind and how you can build most probably everything on this page using Tailwind. If we get the time in the end, we want to understand how to make it responsive as well, by which I mean the most difficult bit here when you're trying to make it responsive is the sidebar collapsing away. And you're having this button to open it up. Everything else is fairly straightforward. So we'll try to do all of that using Tailwind. That's the high level of today's class. It's 7:05, so I think we can kick things off. Let's get right into it. Keep your keyboard ready because it's going to be an extremely hands-on class. Writing a lot of code on Tailwind CSS. Let's get right into it. Things to know in a front-end framework. So if you've gone through the CSS class, which I'm hoping a lot of you have already, you can write raw CSS, and there are 1,000 frameworks that let you do the same thing. If you're switching from one framework to another, the bare minimum thing you need to know of is Flex, grids, responsiveness, and standard styling. For example, the background color, text color, what happens when you hover on a button, things like these. How can you change styles when you hover on a button? If you know all of this, you have the basic foundation of building a website similar to the one that I just showed you in the beginning of the class. So the goal is, we understand how all of this is done in raw CSS, in Tailwind CSS, and then use Tailwind CSS to build the website. All of this is enough to build whatever you saw on screen. Let's kick things off with the Flex. This was part of the CSS class, so I'm doing a revision. If you don't understand, go back to the CSS class. High level, what is Flex? Flex lets you position elements right next to each other. More specifically, if you have multiple divs, for example, here I have div 1, div 2, div 3, I can position them right next to each other if I'm using Flexbox. This code actually looks wrong to me, but I'll show you very quickly in a React project how to write code that looks similar to this, and lets you put 3 divs right next to each other. This is what Flexbox is. It lets you position elements right next to each other. More specifically, position divs right next to each other, which is a common use case on websites. If you look at the website we're building, 3 divs are placed next to each other here. So you need to have divs. If I open the console, you will see this is a div. I'll quickly show you. As you can see, there is a parent div which has 3 children, div 1, div 2, and div 3, and all 3 of these are, positioned next to each other. For this, you need Flex. If you look at it here, it says Flex. We'll get to it very soon. That is the first thing you need to know of. How do you do it in raw CSS like this? How do you do it in Tailwind CSS is the next question. But before that, along with telling that these children need to be next to each other, it's a good idea to tell how these children should be positioned next to each other. For example, if you want them to be spaced equally, then you can use justify content as space between. There are high level 5 values you can provide to justify content, which basically means all my children, how should they be placed next to each other? Should they be placed all at the beginning, which is the default value? If you don't give any justify content, it basically means all 3 children should be at the beginning. Flex end means all of these things should be at the end. Center means all of them should be positioned in the center. Space between means first in the beginning, last in the end, and everything in between spaced equally. And space around means this space is equal to this space is equal to this space. Basically, all of them are spaced equally, but at the same time, this space divided by 2 is left in the beginning, and this space divided by 2 is left in the end. That's space around. Okay? Which one of these are useful? Usually, most of the times you use flex start because you want to just position elements right next to each other. If you know a use case where you want to put thing at the very end, for example, if this search bar wasn't there, but you still wanted sort and this icon at the right, you would use flex end to position both of these at the end of the div. Center, if these two buttons were present at the center of the screen, space between, space around, you'll find use cases where you want specific justify contents to use. Now let's write this code that renders something like this locally in React without Tailwind, and then I'll show you the same how to do the same thing using Tailwind. Okay, so quickly initialize a React project. I'm going to do the same. Maybe try to use Vite because the way to install Tailwind in a Vite project is very different from a different bundler if you use. So just use the standard command we've been using until now, which is npm create Vite at the rate of latest and create a fresh React project locally. I'm going to do the same thing. Make sure you select React as the framework. Make sure you select JavaScript as the language and open it in Visual Studio Code. I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds to do it. I'm hoping this is simple. Also, open the terminal and run npm install. Oh, if you guys cannot see the slides, this is the full link. I'll paste this in chat as well. Full link to the slides has been posted in the chats. All right, let's get back into it. I have an empty React project. Do the standard things. Get rid of everything inside app.css. Get rid of everything inside index.js. Get rid of everything inside here. And try to create 3 divs that can be placed right next to each other really quickly. Style equal to display flex. If this syntax feels weird, how do you write the same thing in raw HTML? You do this div style equal to display flex, right? This is how we had written CSS when we were writing it in raw HTML. If you're writing it in React, you can actually send in an object like this, style equal to this object, where you can give all the styles as key value pairs. Rather than having this sort of a syntax. This is slightly cleaner to maintain in React. Can you write this? I'm unsure. Probably you can still write this in React. I could be wrong, probably not. But in React, what is the way to write inline CSS? It is this, you create an object. What is the object I've created right now? It has just a single property that all my children need to be placed next to each other. So if I write div style equal to background color red, hi. If I give it 3 children, you don't have to code this if this feels fairly simple. But if it doesn't, then feel free to code it on your side. I've written a parent flex with 3 children, one with a red background, green background, and a yellow background. If I save this and open this in my browser, I see 3 children right next to each other. This is how Flexbox works. If I remove this flex, what happens? The 3 divs go one below the other. This is how div was supposed to be on the web. Okay, bhai, the div will take up complete width that you give it. If you want them to be placed right next to each other, there are multiple ways to do it. You can also convert this into a span if you want. But if you want to use it, if you want to do it the right way, basically, use Flexbox. It is a popular way to position elements on your page. What was the other thing I showed? Justify content. Again, in raw CSS, you would write it something like this, justify dash content. But here, when you're using React, then wherever you needed a dash, just replace that with a capital letter. And that's the same as doing justify dash content. You cannot do this in React, especially when you're creating objects. You can probably do this, put it inside quotes, but generally standard practice you'll see all around is justify content with a capital C. And what were the various types you could use? Space around, you will see, equally spaced from this space is equal to this space is equal to this plus this space. What was the other one? Space between, at the end, in the middle, at the end, basically equally spaced. If I make a few more children here, you'll see all of them are equally spaced. Why is this useful? Useful for cases like these where you want 3 of them, let's say, equally positioned right next to each other. Center, the last one. All right, basic, simple, straightforward. Is this simple or is this also hard? Can I just proceed and like, can we, oh, no polls here. Good to go. Should I like increase the speed a bit, or is this also fast? I'm assuming that we've done this many times. All right, great. So it was 90%, which basically means 10% is still confused. This is mostly simple stuff. And if you don't understand Flexbox specifically, then go back to the classes from CSS. If you don't understand how to write it in React, then you probably need to, I don't know, practice a little bit more, I guess. All right, let's proceed. Let's understand how can you write the same code in Tailwind. For that, I would urge you to first install Tailwind in your React application. Tailwind is not a React specific CS styling framework. You can use Tailwind in Vue.js, you can use Tailwind in Next, you can use Tailwind in raw CSS as well. We are using React. We have built React using Vite. So if I go to the tailwindcss.com, this website, and click on get started, it will show me how to install it. There are various ways. There are framework guides, which in our case, since we're using Vite, we can just follow this specific guide to install Tailwind. Do you need to understand everything here? You can if you want. There are basically a few ways. If you don't want to go through framework guides, you can understand what post CSS is and how is it different from Tailwind CLI if you want. But the easiest way to just bootstrap, which is probably how you will do it for most projects when you're doing them in production, in a company, whatever, is to just follow the guide here, which, what does it say? Create your project and then copy over these 2 commands, basically install a bunch of dependencies and then run npx tailwind css init-p. Let me run these here. What am I doing? I'm trying to add Tailwind as a styling library to my React project. Can you add it to other projects? Yes. Can you do it in raw HTML CSS as well? Yes. Going to wait for 10 seconds for you guys to run these commands. Again, the guide can be found on tailwindcss.com/doc/guide/Vite. Let me paste this in chat as well. Also, if this seems fairly simple, feel free to drop off. There's a GSOC class from yesterday. It has picked up a very nice, I've picked up a new GSOC organization, which is, sort of untapped. So feel free to look at that code base. We've done a lot of those things already. You don't have to spend your time here if you already know all of this. All right. After I've run this command, you will see a tailwind.config.js file where, as the name suggests, you put a lot of Tailwind configurations. We will see what these configurations are. The most important one is what all files should Tailwind be looking at to understand where are you using Tailwind classes. What are Tailwind classes? We will come to very soon. But what all files are you using Tailwind inside? That you have to mention here. And in our case, we might be using an index.html. We actually won't, so I can actually remove this also. And then we are saying in my source folder, anything inside which ends with .js, .ts, .jsx, .tsx, please watch for those. Those files will contain some Tailwind logic. All right. So this is the next thing you have to do. Again, you can just follow this top to bottom from this code and it will be fairly simple to do. GSOC class is present on app.100xsteps.com in the ad hoc section. All right. Lastly, it says index.css. May paste these three and you're good to go. You have Tailwind installed in your React application. If I run npm run dev now, I can use Tailwind styles, or like however is the way to do styling using Tailwind in my React application now. If I rerun npm run dev, I still have the same code. I can still do normal CSS like I've been doing, but now I can use Tailwind as well. What is Tailwind though? What is the syntax of using Tailwind in your application? If I go to the original page, you will see some demo code that they've written. They say image class equal to w-24 h-24. From the name of it, it seems like it's saying give it a width of 24 pixels or something like that. Give it a height of 24 pixels. Make it completely rounded. And this is the output that I see on the left as well. So most probably, it seems like you have to write code like this, which basically means rather than doing a image style equal to an object, you have to do image class equal to a bunch of classes. This is how you write Tailwind code. This is critiqued a lot as well. Okay, you know, it gets very verbose, as you can see. It is extremely long here. It has upsides and downsides. It's popularly used everywhere now. If you look at any big project, if you look at web.sh code base, you will find places where you will feel like, yeah, why is this so ugly and long? I don't like this as a framework. Trust me, this is the better framework for 1,000 reasons. Biggest reason being it gives you a lot of customizability compared to frameworks like Mui, which is like another popular framework that used to be used for styling in React. I have a detailed video on this on my channel where I sort of explain which is better, which is not. In the end, you have to make peace with writing such long class names, which is the right way of doing styling in Tailwind. All right. Let's look at how you can write the same code base. All of this, if you had to write it in Tailwind. The way to do that is div class name equal to, and convert all of these into whatever their equivalent Tailwind classes are. Harkirat, where can I find the equivalent Tailwind class for this? Great question. You can go to the docs here. And on the left, you will see basically everything you need. If you look at any of my code with me lives that I do on YouTube, I'm using Tailwind almost in every project now. I just go here and look for whatever I'm looking for. For example, right now I was looking for flex. And here it says, okay, bhai, if you want to create a flex or, you know, do something similar to what we're doing here, create a parent which has display set to flex. Use this class name equal to flex. There should be a better one. I can't find a very good doc that basically gives you something like this. If you write flex here, then it should say it is equivalent to you writing display : flex over here. So if you look at it, everything that you will see here in all of these that give you flex direction, flex grow, which is something we can come to, you will see the parent has class equal to flex. If you write this much code, it is the same as writing this code right here. Let's see if that actually works. Let me use the normal styles in all the children. But in the parent, I'm using Tailwind classes. One small nuance here is you have to write class name here and not class. It will tell you to write class here, but you cannot write class in a .ts file because class is a reserved word in JavaScript. So whenever in React, rather than writing class, you should write class name. That's the only high level difference. If you're not in React, if you're using Tailwind with a simple HTML project, then you can write class here. All right. Let's see if this works. Seems to be working. All of them are right next to each other. I have not yet added another class, which is the equivalent of this right here. But I have added flex and I see all of them right next to each other. If I remove this from the second one, you will see all of them are one below the other. The first one is still doing fine. which is this code right here. But in the second code, unless I add class name equal to flex, they appear one next to the other, which basically means this is equivalent to this. Are we good to go? Proceed, simple stuff. Can we raise the bar? Cool. Still closer to 90%. Again, at the end, happy to take doubts. All right. Now let's look at the equivalent of justify content. Again, I would go here and look at justify content docs. And it says, if you want justify content set to space between, the class that you have to write is justify between. So if I go here and type justify between, what do I see here? I see there placed with an equal space. Similarly, justify center will put all of them in the center, so on and so forth. So basically this much code is equivalent to this much code. And similarly, if you want to put a background color of red or whatever, there are similar class names that you can apply here. bg-red-500 will give you a background color of red. And similarly, bg green or yellow 500 will give you a background color of yellow, so on and so forth. Halkiyat, what is this 500? We'll come to very soon, but high level, you can, replace your complete code, which had style equal to something, with a bunch of class names equal to something. Eventually, you will see each one of these class names become very big, which is why there is a very common meme on Twitter, which I'm happy to share at the end of the class. These get very long. And you will see this in production databases, production code bases as well. If you go to the code base of dub.sh, you will see wherever they've written all their, components, they're very long and it is accepted. It is fine. And, it's sort of the norm right now. Okay, this is how front ends are written. If I go to this specific code base and open a bunch of these components, you will see there very long divs, as you can see. Div class name equal to such a bunch of these Tailwind classes, but this is the norm. This is how people do it. This is a production sort of code base, and as ugly as it might look, this is how things are done. All right, cool, Haji. Let's proceed. We're done with Flexbox and how to do flex blocks in Tailwind. So let's understand a few other standard things. What did I say at the beginning of the class? These are the things we need to understand in any front-end framework if you're moving to flex, grids, responsiveness, and standard styles. Let's look at grids next. We understand flex. All right. Just to rake it in, you will replace style with class name equal to flex, and then whatever, however you want to position your elements, which in this case is justify between, which is why they're equally spaced. All right. Let's move on. Grids in Tailwind. This is another important thing you will see across code bases. Or websites, which is, for websites to be responsive, notice something. As I make this smaller, they appear one below the other. As I make it bigger, they appear one next to the other. So as you change the width and the height, in fact, in the middle, it becomes 1, 2, and 3. They sort of again reposition themselves. So this keeps on changing as to how many elements need to be in a single line based on the current width of the page. This is what's called adding responsiveness to your page. Very common use case again. How should elements be placed? And one should be bigger, one should be smaller. This is what's called grids in Tailwind. Even in other frameworks, they're sort of known as grids. Let's see how you can create use cases like these in Tailwind. All right. Let's say you have to build something like this. Like, this is simple. 3 elements right next to each other. You can do this via Flexbox as well. But it gets tricky when you have to make them of different width. I repeat, you need to put 3 divs right next to each other. First one taking X, second one taking X, and this one taking like some basically 40%, 40%, and 20% of the space. How do you create something like this? In raw CSS, there's no example here of how to do this with raw CSS. It's very easy to do with raw CSS as well. Happy to just give them like widths of 40%, 40%, and 20%. The way to do that in Tailwind, let's say we have to first create 3 divs which are of equal width, is this right here. The parent has a grid class, which means I'm going to be a grid. I'm going to have multiple children, which will have some space, or be equally placed, or be placed at some 40%, 40%, 20% intervals. Grid calls 3. This is important. This basically represents how many parts I want to divide my window in, and 3 basically means you'll divide it into 3 parts, I think. So if you write this code, you're able to create a grid which has 3 children inside. Let's just write this code and go from there. I'm actually not 100% sure if this does what I'm thinking it does. All right, parent grid calls 3. Yeah, that makes sense. It will have 3 columns. I'm creating a grid which will have 3 columns, and then I'm creating 3 children, one with a red background, one with a yellow background, and one with a green background. If I go back here, red, yellow, and green. All right. What happens if I add a 4th one, Hakirat? It will go into the next line. I have said that this grid will have 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. If you add 6 children, they will of course overflow onto the next lines, and that's how you can add more and more elements and place them together. I have not yet solved the problem of responsiveness. I have just placed elements right next to each other such that they take the complete width. This is different from what we did in the last section, which was Flexbox. In Flexbox, the divs were only taking as much div as space as needed. You can change it to take up the complete space as well. But generally, if you want 3 elements, or the page needs to be divided into 3 parts, where the first part takes the full width, second part takes the full width, you can use grid in Tailwind. Can you do the same using Flex? Yes, you can. Just make the children have complete width, the class for which is w-full, and that will sort of do the same thing. All right. Grids with equal children is easy, and by equal children I mean children having equal width. This is the code. Feel free to write it on your side and try it out. I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds. Try to replace this with 4 and see how this changes. Replace this with 5 and see how this changes. Basically, this number represents how many parts you want to divide your window in. So if this is 5, it means you will have 5 children of 20% each. How is it different from Bootstrap? Good question. I mean, firstly, it's different in the syntax as well. I know it has Bootstrap has a very similar syntax of dividing things into columns. That said, how is it different from Bootstrap? Let's look at Bootstrap docs really quickly. It's been years since I've looked at Bootstrap docs. Grid. I mean, the syntax is very slightly different. Why is Tailwind used more popularly than compared to Bootstrap? No idea. I get that I'm sure there are reasons as to why this is used more. Bootstrap is I don't know. I want to call it archaic, but what grounds am I calling it archaic on? I don't know. Yeah, the syntax is very similar. Hakiyat, why is this used more than that? No idea. Maintained more, better team, more funding, standard reasons, if that is a reason at all. All right. How do you make them of unequal widths is the next thing. Here, what you can do is, okay, bhai, I'm going to divide my 100% width into 12 parts or whatever, 10 parts. And the first one is going to span across 5 parts. I repeat, if I add another class here called grid dash, call dash span dash 5, and same for the second child. And for the third child, call dash span dash 2. 442, my bad. And let's make this yellow. What does this code do? It divides them into 40%, 40%, and 20%, which was the original thing that I was talking about. If you want to create different widths for all the children, this is the syntax to do it. Can you do it other ways? Yes, you can still do it via Flexbox. Div class name equal to flex, and then have like w dash 1 divided by, what's 40%? 2 divided by, I'm sure I can write some syntax here, which this might not be the right one, but you can still achieve the same thing by writing some code like this or exactly like this. Okay, so you can write code like this as well, which does not use grid and uses this w dash syntax, but this is the cleaner syntax quite clearly. Yeah, feel free to pick and choose again. You can find thousand different ways to do the same thing. This is what you should by standard use when you're using Tailwind, trying to achieve a use case like this. All right, cool. Done with flex, done with grids. The next, last, very important and the most difficult bit here is going to be how to make it responsive. Basically, what if I tell you, okay, bhai, if this is big, then they need to be 40, 40, 20. If it becomes small, it needs to be 100, 100, 100. Similar to what's happening on the Dukaan website here. If it's full, they're divided 33%, 33%, 33%. If I make it smaller, they become 50%, 50%, 100%. If I make it really small, they become 100%, 100%, 100%. How do you make the divs take different widths based on what device you're on, what is the current width basically? Simple stuff. Shall I proceed? Happy to again open the code. Oh, great. Cool, good to go. Lastly, how do you position things separately based on whether you're on a mobile device or on a tablet or on a machine? All right, unequal widths, we understand this. Responsiveness. So here comes a new concept which is again not related to Tailwind. It is how do you define how big your screen is, or what are called breakpoints in your screen. These are common breakpoints you will see mentioned across, again, Material UI, other styling frameworks. Okay, bhai, if my screen is less than equal to 640 pixels, I can say it is small right now. If it is between 640 to 768, which is something you'll see on like tablets or like smaller tablets, I can call it medium. If it is more than 768, less than 1024, then I'll call it large. It's actually a little, the exact term could be, if it's less than 640 pixels, then it's small. If it's less than 768 pixels, then it is medium, or the other way around. Okay, if it's between 0 and 768 pixels, it is small. If it is between 768 pixels and 1024 pixels, it is medium. If it is between 1024 pixels to 1280 pixels, it is large, so on and so forth. There are basically what are called standard breakpoints on a page. Okay, you can say, bhai, if the width is really small, less than 640 pixels, then this is a small screen, or this is the SM breakpoint. What does breakpoint mean? It means कि भाई इससे बड़ा हो गया. If it goes bigger than 640 ps, then I will say it is, and it has crossed the SM endpoint or breakpoint, and it is between SM and MD. So basically, you can divide a screen into various breakpoints. कि भाई if it is less than 640 pixels, then it's XS. If it is between 640 and whatever the next breakpoint was, 768, then it is MD, so on and so forth. And why is this useful? Why am I saying this again and again? XS MD, we'll share very soon. But these breakpoints are sort of usually standard places at which you will see the layout change. If you look at the Dukaan page, at the XS breakpoint, which is width, let's say less than 640 pixels, or some smallest width that a normal device can have. You can go make this like really small, itnu sa, but like realistically people won't see it on such a small device, right? They'll see it at least on a mobile device, which will look something like this. On this device, on this breakpoint or less, on SM or less, I want these to be under certain conditions. And then when it becomes more than, let's say, the MD endpoint, when it becomes more than 768 pixels, is when I want the layout to change a bit. Ke haan, chalo, now they're placed next to each other. So these breakpoints are usually standard points at which you will see the layout of your page change. For example, At this breakpoint, you're seeing the sidebar open and close, open and close. If I'm at the, whatever this breakpoint is, which I think most probably is MD, you will see the sidebar open and close. So the reason the window is divided into these breakpoints is you can write conditional logic in Tailwind ke bhai, if I'm less than XS, then do something. If I'm more than XS, then do something else. We'll see how to write it. The thing to keep in mind is that you break your window width into, or your overall width of your app into various breakpoints, XS, MD, LG, XL and 2XL. You can actually configure these in the Tailwind config that we were seeing. But high level, the thing to keep in mind, these are the breakpoints of your application. And you write conditional code in Tailwind. Okay, if I'm under SM, then I want to render things a certain way. If I'm over MD, I want to render things a certain way, so on and so forth. All right, let's proceed. Now, this is one slide that you need to understand very well. Okay, Tailwind is mobile first, working mobile first. What does this mean? This is very important because the Tailwind syntax is slightly skewed as to how you have to write this conditional logic. So, important slide. Pay attention. By default, Tailwind uses a mobile first breakpoint system, similar to what you might have seen in frameworks like Bootstrap. What this means is that unprefixed utilities take effect on all screen sizes, while prefixed utilities only take effect on that breakpoint and above. If you understand this line, you are sorted. This is an important line to understand. What we will do as we will write our code is, this is how we will write conditional logic. Okay, by div class equal to sm colon some class name, which you might think means that bhai, if I am a small screen, then text should be center. This is what you might think. Okay, when you write code like this, it would mean. But what is it saying here? What this means is that unprefixed utilities take effect on all screen sizes, while prefixed utilities, this is a prefix utility, only take effect at that specific breakpoint and above, not below. What does that mean? That means that bhai, text will be centralized on a small screen or above, which means above 640 pixels basically. So basically means at less than 640 pixels, this will not come into effect. At greater than equal to 640 pixels is when this will actually take effect. Seems completely counterintuitive. You might feel that SM text center means at less than equal to 640 pixels, this class takes effect. But when does this class take effect? At greater than 640 pixels. If you understand this bit, you are sorted. This is the difficult bit here. Used unprefixed utilities to target mobile and override them at larger breakpoints. It says that bhai, if you want the text to be centralized on mobile, used unprefixed utilities. Text dash center means it will be centralized on mobile or on a small screen, and SM text left means anything above small, it will move to the left. Completely opposite of what you might think. What you might think would be कि हाँ, text center SM text left means it will be centralized generally, and on a small screen it will be put on the left, but it's the opposite of that. On a mobile device it will be centralized. On anything above small, anything above 640 pixels, it will be on the left. Sounds weird? It is weird. Let's try to code it and see if this is true or not, but this is true. It's an opposite approach. It is what you want by default. Text center basically means text will be centralized on every window, but if you put this right next to it, SM colon text left, it means anything above this, which means if it's a slightly bigger screen, very big screen, extremely big screen, then this will come into configuration or like come into effect. All right. This is what's called mobile first approach. I get it's ugly, but once you understand it, you can, just get used to it and code assuming that. Okay. Chalo, let's write it and see if that actually happens. Let's get rid of everything here. Let's say bg dash red, background color should be red, md colon bg dash blue, and add whatever 500 here. Hi there. Just try to look at what output this gives you. That should give you an idea of, what this md colon does. It says not at md less than equal to. It says when the md breakpoint is reached, anything above it will use this. And by default, it will be red, which means on a bigger screen, you will see blue. On a bigger screen, you're seeing blue. If I make it really small, it becomes red. If I go below the MD breakpoint, it becomes, sorry, by default, it remains red. If I go above the MD breakpoint, it becomes blue. All right. ये समझ आया? This is the only perplexing thing in Tailwind. If you understand this, then you're sorted. All right. Quickly looking at Q&A. What's weird here? Could you inspect and decrease the size? Pixel size? Oh, you want to see? Inspect. Below 640 pixels, how can we do it? You cannot. You can, if you want to see what happens at below 640 pixels, you can open this. And so as you can see, let's go. At what breakpoint did it become red to blue? 760, some 766 pixels or something like that. 766 pixels way. It went from red to blue. And what was the MD breakpoint? If I go to slides, it was 768 pixels. So what is happening? MD breakpoint is 768 pixels. MD breakpoint is 768 pixels. At less than 768 pixels, it is red. What is the code? Let me open this on the side. Open this here. The code says blue after MD, not before MD, after MD. If it goes above 760 pixels, blue. By default, red. This is what mobile first is. Okay, bhai, mobile mein whatever you have to write, you write as such, unprefixed. Anything that you want other than mobile, if you want a bigger screen, has a separate style, you write it here. Someone was asking how can I give it a very small width. You can click on this mobile icon here and then just give whatever width you want. If you want to see like extremely small width or height, like 20 or whatever. All right, there you go. Okay, cool. Let's go back to the slides. Can you guys, if you know this already and you understand this, can you quickly write the code of how can I have 3 equally placed children? But if I go below MD, they become one below the other. Can you write this? I think with this knowledge, if you understand this, you should be able to write the code. I will repeat the problem statement. 3 equal children first. If I go below MD, then it should be one below the other. Similar to what's happening here. They are going one below the other on MD. But if I make it bigger, they're coming right next to each other. Can you write the code for it here? Considering you know already, this is how the MD breakpoint works. I'm going to write it as well. And then we'll take a break after we finish this part. All right. I've written this code. Can you try to convert this code into, if it goes below MD, they appear one below the other. How many of you have done it already? I might be going a little too slow here, so let me launch a poll. Is this straightforward? Okay, cool, great. Seems pretty straightforward. The solution is, by default, it needs to be one column, and after MD, it needs to be 3 columns. If I refresh now, at really small, they're one below the other. If I make it above MD, they're right next to each other. All right, let's wrap up the slides really quickly then. There's not much left. Then we'll take a break. Then we'll start coding the Dukan assignment. Color system. So throughout the code that I wrote, you saw I was writing BG-red-500, BG-blue-500. These are like standard colors that Tailwind provides you. Really smart designers have written. There are a few variants of them. For example, red has a few variants, light to dark. orange, so on and so forth. So you can just use them. You can also override these. For example, in the Dukan assignment, there are some specific blue colors that they have. So we'll see how you can override the whatever the blue color here is with some specific Dukan specific blue colors. Backgrounds and font colors. This is pretty straightforward. If this is how you do backgrounds and colors in raw CSS, this is how you do it in Tailwind. BG-green-500 means background color of 500. Text-red-500 means the text color is going to be red 500, which again, you can find what red 500 is right here. All right, this you can find on the Tailwind docs. You can also override these colors. Font size is text-XS, text-SM, text-base, LG, XL, which basically represent these font sizes. So you can increase font sizes based on attaching these classes. Border radius, if you want to make things slightly rounded, then you use rounded S, rounded SLG, rounded XL, rounded 3XL. This looks wrong, वैसे. Basically these four classes: rounded MD, rounded LG, and then rounded full. Rounded full will give it a border radius of 50%, some 10 pixel border radius, 2 pixel border radius, 1 pixel border radius. Cool. That's it. Done with the slides. Let's start to code. I will give a small 10-minute break for everyone to, we know everything now to be able to build this. I don't know how much of this we'll be able to build today. But let's do that next. Let's take a small 10-minute break. I'm going to look at chat. 8 p.m. we'll start coding very diligently. We'll try to go component by component. So I'll first ask you to create this component. I will create it myself. And then we'll create this component and this component. These are pretty similar. Then we'll try to position them on the page and make it responsive. Then we'll create the table, sidebar, top bar. Let's see how much we can do. But high level, the thing to take from the video is in Tailwind is nothing other than normal raw CSS classes. And you can find everything you need to sort of convert raw CSS to Tailwind classes on this specific page. So yeah, every CSS attribute is sort of a class here. All right, break. Going to open chat now. We'll meet back at 8 p.m. guys. Okay, that was pretty fast. Someone posted a cheat sheet. Let's look at it. Grid again. Let me do grid again. Make a video on GSOC proposal. I have one from 2018. Just search GSOC proposal, Harkirat, you'll reach there. Advice is still the same. Writing class name is not covering the whole space. There is some space left, right. If there is some space left and right, then you most probably haven't cleared your index.css and app.css when the default one that you installed. Can I skip MUI and Tailwind? I already know Bootstrap. You can, but the projects that we look at, the projects that we will create at least will use Tailwind. And also, it's less of a battle between Bootstrap and anything else. Now Bootstrap is, believe it or not, sort of lost in the sense that no one's using it. MUI is still used. Backpack still uses MUI, but all other projects I've looked at use Tailwind. So, pick and choose. I would still learn this. It's not too difficult if you know already, Bootstrap already. How to CSS image or video, like backgrounds. How to CSS image or video? How to CSS image or video? How to add a background image? Is that your question? Splitting class name is not covering. Okay, answer that. Does the heavy reliance on inline styles in Tailwind impact the separation of concern and maintainability, given that it encourages writing styles directly inside markup? Great question. Sort of. But at the same time, if you look at libraries like ShadCN, they basically let you sort of, in the end, these are not, you don't write code like this in the end. You have components that look, 1 second. You create components and various variants of those components. For example, if you look at this button component that they've created, this has a lot of unnecessary or, long verbose logic, but it exposes a few simple variants that your end application uses. So the end application still uses something like button variant equal to something. And then, all of this logic, as you can see, there's like very nice, debatable if this is nice or not, but this is like conditional logic. If it is disabled, then do this and, attach a specific class name. If either this is disabled or it is loading, then attach these class names. Else, if the variant is primary, attach these class names. You can shove all of this logic in your button component that you write, and then your application throughout uses a very simple button variant equal to X, button variant equal to Y. This is more or less the ShatCN default button that you get. This is where the world is moving basically. Okay, you create one-time highly opinionated buttons or components, and then eventually you don't use any of these Tailwind classes inside your application. Your React application just uses this button component. All right. My video covers all of this exactly. Just there's a video in which I'm doing this, and it says CSS is dead. I covered this very well there. When to use flex, when to use grid. If you want to use the complete width, then probably use grid. When to use flex? Cases like these, if you look at this 2300 needs to be on the left, this needs to be on the right. So I would create there's no point of using grids here, right? What will you do? Create two grids when this guy's not taking the full width. What's the point of creating a grid here? So here I would use flex. On all three that are taking the complete width, this card, and this card, I would use grid. Can we learn most about easiest, efficient, dark theme, light theme, music tail? The most efficient and easiest and efficient way to do light and dark themes on a web page using Tailwind? Great question. Using Tailwind, it is just the same highly verbose logic that I can show very quickly, which basically is, you attach certain classes based on if the dark theme is on, dark : BG dash green dash 500. Your code becomes more and more verbose. If you use something like ShatCN, which I'm assuming under the hood still, uses. So if you use something like ShatCN, you will see it lets you sort of define colors at the top. So in that case, you can use simply BG dash primary. And then, this primary will change based on whether the dark theme is on or the light theme is on. But if you're not using ShatCN, if you're using raw Tailwind, then it's just more verbose code that you write, more conditional logic that you write. Okay, bhai, red on the light theme, green on the dark theme, which becomes a pain in the butt very quickly. Stylex became a buzzword recently. Have you tried it? I have not tried it. How to run this in vanilla HTML? Oh, it's pretty simple. Just go to Tailwind installation. It'll give you the steps to do it using Tailwind CLI. So create a simple HTML, CSS, JavaScript project. Run these two commands. Give the links to wherever all your CSS or HTML and JavaScript code is, or more specifically just HTML code is in that case. And then just add this to a CSS file. And then over there, you will have to just do this command, which will basically regenerate your CSS based on whatever classes that you added here. But basically this, just follow this. You can do it using this specific guideline. Someone did the same thing with Material UI, which also looks pretty good if I'm being honest. This looks pretty good. It's pretty similar. So there's one thing that you missed here, which I feel a lot of people missed. I don't know how Dukan selected people, if I'm being honest. They had 800 submissions or something. Every submission looked pretty similar. But I think if you missed, they were looking for pixel perfection. One thing that a lot of people missed was this first card, at least in their docs, was blue. And here it's not blue. A lot of people missed this. I think they might have just taken this as a filtering criteria to reach, at least 50 submissions that they manually looked at. But yeah, this looks pretty good. The same thing using Material UI. MD code again. Let me explain both grids and MD really quickly. Grids is, how many children do I want to, how many parts do I want to divide my window in? If I say grid calls 3, it means divide myself into 3 parts. Each one of these will take 33%, 33%, 33% width. So if I save this and open it, you look at the code, it divides the window into 3 equal parts. Why? Because I said grid calls 3. If I make it 4, it divides it into 4 equal parts. The 4th one is currently empty. If I add more divs here, you will see they overflow to the next line, and each one of them is taking 25% space now. Now I tell you, when the width is bigger, then I want 4 children. But when the width is smaller, I want them one below the other to take 100% width. How can you do it? You will say, what do you want on mobile? What is the default thing you want? It is mobile first. What is the thing that you want on mobile? I just want a single child because I want each one of them to take 100% width. And what do you want above MD? What do you want above 756 pixels? MD : I want it divided into, let's say, 2 parts. And what do you want above LG when the screen becomes large and above? I want, let's say, 4 children. Now if I refresh, above MD gets divided into 2 parts. Above LG gets divided into 4 parts. This is something you'll commonly see on websites, right? 4 children on a big window. If I make it smaller, they become 2. If I make it really small, they become 1. And what is the code? The code is what you want it to look like on a mobile device, what you want it to look on greater than mobile, less than large, or basically greater than mobile, and then what do you want it to appear on large and above. So that's why it's a little confusing. It's not ke bhai MD colon means it will be at MD and below. MD colon means it will be at MD and after. MD and after it will remain 2 until it reaches large, after which it becomes 4. All right. Yeah, those are the 2 important concepts to know. All right. Did not have too much time to look at the chat here. Let's do this in a way I would do this for a company. If I were to do this for the Dukan assignment, if I'm being honest, I would use something called Storybook, which basically lets you create something like this. It lets you create these components and put them in a very nice sort of web page and let other people explore them, customize them. You can basically, if you want to ever outsource creating components to an external team or like impress an interviewer, I guess I would first add Storybook to my project. I'm not going to, but it's very easy to add Storybook. It makes it a little hard. Anytime you're adding a new component, you need to add its stories, which let you, explore that component like this. But this is a bare minimum thing I would do if I was doing this for an assignment. Okay. After I would do this, I would start by building these components independently. I repeat, I would build this colored card component, or I would just create a simple, I would call it revenue card. Yeah, I would create a revenue card component which would have 2 variants, a blue variant and a simple variant, simple and colored variant. And that inside that component I would render either this or this based on the title, the amount, and then whether or not there is something on the right, so on and so forth. So let's start by building this component. Let's create a simple revenue card component and let's try to bring it as close to this as we can using Tailwind. All right. We'll learn a few new things here. How do you bring icons into your project? How do you add this link sort of a style? Yeah, that's probably what we'll learn. So chalo, let's kick things off by emptying our project, creating a new component here. So create a components folder inside which create a revenue card.tsx. And here we have to write the code that gives you this card. The code that you write here will not assume anything about the width of the card. I repeat, the code that you write here will not try to restrict the width of the card to be 33% or anything. It will give you a full width card. Whoever is using this will use grid and make sure it only, puts it at a 33% width or whatever. This will assume that you're creating a full width grid, card. And what does it have? Background color is white. So bg-white has some border associated. So I would call it rounded, which gives you some small border. Let's zoom in here. There's some shadow here, which I can just yoink from here. In fact, I mean, if I really want, I can just copy over the style. Like this guy already has written in a Tailwind. So let's not open this. Let's maybe open the Figma file that they had and go from there, which will be, let's see. I don't know if they're, what's his name? Yeah, let's open the Figma file and try to target it. If it's still up, I'll share the link. Wow. How do you open? Okay, I'm linking the tweet in the chat, and let me see if I can find the link as well. Okay, how do I open this? Okay, there you go. Okay, I've pasted this in chat so you guys can, okay, see a few people here already. Let's look at, oh, where is their blue card component though? Has this changed or I don't know. Chalo, theek hai. What are we doing? We are doing this. So I would click here. Oh, can we not see the styles? Is this not editable? No, it isn't. So usually when you are working in a team and you get Figma styles, you can actually just click on it and see the styles. There are too many people here, so I'm just going to close it. Feel free to look at it if you want. I'm just going to wing it and try to get very close to this sort of box shadow that appears here. So box shadow, Tailwind, shadow SM. What else? That's it. Then there's one div with the title, which will be this, and then the title will come in as an input, and then show warning, which will be a boolean. If show warning is true, then we have to render another icon here, else don't render anything here, because this icon will, well, if I'm being honest, it's being rendered in every card, so we probably don't need conditional logic here. We can just render an icon here. I'll show how to put an icon here. For now, this is fine. Also should rename this to .jsx. All right, what else? Some text and then something on the right, which again is conditional based on whether or not something is passed in as an input. So order count and then amount. These are probably separated by flex, so class name equal to flex, and then justify between a div which renders what? It renders the amount. Probably should be processed a bit and have a rupees in front of it, and you need to put the commas and all that jazz. And then 13 orders, which is something which will conditionally render if order count is passed in as an input. Then you here also we need to put an icon. For now, let me put this. All right. So this is the code that I've written for the component. It takes a title, an order count, and an amount as an input, and renders a card, which has a background color of white. You guys can see it. It's simple code here, nothing too fancy. Let me go back to app.jsx and try to render it. Here is where storybook, the thing that I showed initially, would have been slightly more easier for us to test these. Now I need to create components and then, put them in app.jsx to test them, but that is fine for now. Amount equal to all right, let's see how this looks like. All right, this is what the card looks like. Looks pretty ugly right now. What is missing? This needs to be very bold. This needs to be gray in color. Question mark needs to be nice. Basically, a lot of things are missing. So let's first make this a little smaller when it's rendering. So let me put a div class name equal to grid dash 3 slash div. I have a small card here. I probably need to, number one, make this slightly the shadow more prominent. Number two, add some padding. The way to add padding is p dash some amount. Again, just go here, search for padding, and then you'll find all the classes you need for, horizontal padding, vertical padding, all that jazz. Let's put a p dash 2. There's a lot of padding all around here, if I'm being honest. So let's make a p dash 4. Amount pending is gray in color, so let's write class name equal to text dash gray dash 700. Yep, that became gray. Let's replace this with an actual icon. The way to do icons in Tailwind is there are a few sort of popular libraries that you can use. Hero Icons is the one that I use usually. It just gives you the SVG for the icon. So just search for whatever, question mark, or let's see. Oh, you cannot find question mark here, can you? We can find this at least. Let me copy this one. This is chevron right, which is something we need over here. So let me paste this here. Okay, I'm gonna pause here. Just complete this and then pause. All right. Do we understand how shall I proceed basically? Are you guys following along? Should I stop? Should we do something else? Can you guys do this already yourself? How are we doing? Let's do should we proceed to do this? Yes. No, let's understand MUI syntax. No, let us code and you code after some time. Okay, let's take 3 routes here. I did the same class last cohort as well, and most people just said, we understand, let's do FAQs. So let's see if we want to do that. I'm happy to just convert the session into an FAQ section. All right. Where did the poll go? Sorry, one second guys, let me create a new poll. What should we do next? Continue. Harkirat, continue coding. Give us what to code. We will code it ourselves. Eventually you code. Understand MUI. Q&A. All right. So I'm giving 4 options. If this works, Zoom seems to be. Why is Zoom not working here? Untitled poll. Wow, Zoom is crashing. Did the meeting end? What the hell? Oh, okay, there we go. All right, hoping the yeah, there you go. Okay, guys, fill it up. Let's. All right, continue coding. Great, good to go. For the people who want to code, okay, so the results are 50% Harkirat continue coding, 25% want to code themselves. Do it. You can just look at the code later on. 21% understand MUI. I can take you through MUI at the end of the class. Let me create a few cards. Let's go from there. Chalo. This needs to be blue in color and needs to have an underline below it, as you can see here. So let's do that. text dash blue dash 400. Should ideally be matching colors with the design. Basically, what you should ideally do is get the color from here or from the Figma design, basically something like this. If you have Figma access, you will have the exact color. If not, you should go here, upload the image, get the exact color, put that in your Tailwind configuration. Colors, blue, 700 is this, and then use this. Basically follow whatever the Figma designs tell you. Don't create colors out of your own head if you want to do like pixel perfection. Now if I use text blue 700, I've overridden it to the same one from the designs, or from this guy's submission. And now if I look at it, this color and this color are exactly the same. Are they though? Doesn't look like it. I probably need to restart. Oh no, it is. All right. Cool. I have this. This icon also needs to be the same color. Hero icons, color, Tailwind, fill. There you go. Fill blue 500. So SVG class name equal to fill dash blue dash 700. The hell? Uh-huh. $13 orders, amount pending. Need to fix this. We'll come back to it. Cursor pointer and needs to have an underline below it. All right. It's a little more bold. So font weight Tailwind. Semi-bold looks right. That's a little too bold if I'm being honest. This is much bigger. What is this? The revenue. So this guy right here. Bold. Text dash to Excel. Needs to have a padding. Needs to be centrally aligned. Flex. right. I'm copying over a different SVG instead of the question mark to proceed. Ideally, you should not have this SVG, you should have the right SVG, whatever they want there. This one looks pretty close to it, so I'm adding it. But in the final submission, you should have a question mark SVG here. You can either get it from Figma, whoever gave you the designs, basically. You can find the question mark SVG there. All right. Cool. Size should be slightly smaller. Let me finish this card, push it up, and then I'm happy to explain and then take more questions. All right, mount pending card, 13 orders. The only thing that's weird right now is this icon. Okay, let me take a pause here first. The thing that I still need to do is make the color of this better, make this slightly smaller in size, which shouldn't be too difficult, and then vertically align this as well. Let me open chat and make sure we're doing good and I'm not just coding and you guys are not doing anything. Were you guys able to code this? Okay, am I going too fast? Explain. This is easy. Some people are saying easy, some are saying hard. All right. Are we going to cover regex and jx? Change the stroke. Can someone just paste that? Okay, someone pasted a Figma design. Okay, let me not code so quickly and not explain anything. Let me go step by step here. Someone pasted a link to Figma, which again I can't really look at the designs here. Bulky, do we need MUI, Tailwind? Okay, let me do a poll, which will probably be the better way to proceed here. Shall I proceed doing what I'm doing, or should I pause? I will pause. It's at a 50-50. And whenever that happens, we tend to look at beginners. So the people who said no, people who said I should pause, what should we do? Tailwind glasses. Oh, there is a lot of lag. Oh, okay, got it. Make the responsive sidebar. Yeah, that's what I want to reach as well. Explain the storybook thing. Okay, from what I can get, there is a combination of, we want to learn storybook, want to learn material UI. No one wants to do this basically. Seems pretty simple. I agree. It's a lot about Googling and, achieving pixel perfection. Someone said create the responsive sidebar, which I agree is the most difficult bit in this, like building this website. The place that you'll boggle your head a bit. Where did it go? There you go. Is how to make the sidebar responsive. But thankfully, even this person has used sidebar in Tailwind. This thing right here. We use the same thing in our app.100xapps.com. If you go here, the sidebar that you see here also uses this specific very big Tailwind sidebar component. So does this guy, the person who created the person who got the job. So the people asking for the sidebar, you can look at this code. The only thing that will be weird would be a bunch of translate classes here, because if you look at it, this is sort of animated, and you can do that very easily in Tailwind, and that's what sort of this code does as well. Everything else here should be fairly straightforward. Again, the whole point of on a small screen you hide it, on a big screen you show it, so on and so forth. And so the sidebar people go here. For the storybook people, happy to dive into it. Is there anything other that's big here that I should talk about? No. Okay, maybe hover styles. There's one thing that you will eventually need to worry about. For example, in this card, when you hover over it, the color changes. The way to do that is just, let's see, something like this: hover : bg red 100. Now if I go to my card, if I hover over it, it becomes red. So adding a hover : any style, this style will kick in when you hover on that specific element. This will be useful here on these cards and on this card. Table should be fairly straightforward. Sidebar was the difficult thing. This search bar will be slightly difficult, but again, you can find search bar in Tailwind. That will give you, you should understand this, not just blindly copy it if you want blindly copy it, but this again, as you can see, has like a search bar. You can get rid of the button, change the colors a bit, and you can get a very simple search bar. Is there anything that's difficult in this Dukaan assignment? Icon. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So theek hai. I'm assuming you guys can take care of this. There is also a video from the last cohort on Tailwind in which we cloned YouTube, which again was very similar. I started to code and then eventually people we can code it. I'm happy to post that video as well. it has the same set of slides, so it's pretty much a copy pasta of today's class. Let's understand Storybook a bit and then Material UI a bit. Let me do a poll so that you learn something new other than Tailwind. What do you want to learn? Storybook. We want to learn. Storybook is a little too extra. No simple Q&A, but good to know. And then Material UI is a little too archaic. You can still use it, as you saw people used it. But okay, high level. Third option is Q&A, by the way, not ANA. Okay, Storybook. All right, let's see how you can add Storybook to your project. Is something I want to add to my project as well, like app.100devs.com. The problem is I can't open source this code for a few reasons, because there's some privacy protection logic I don't want to open source, but I do want to open source, for example, this whole component. So for example, for 1 week almost, this button wasn't there. People were looking at videos, and then when they were making the window smaller, this sidebar would still appear here, which is a bad experience. It would have been nice if someone could fix it, but no one can fix it unless I open source it. I cannot open source the whole code base. What can I open source? I can open source just the components. How? Storybook is the best way to do it. Okay, you create a fresh repo in which you have your components, and you have these stories and this Storybook integration, which makes it easy for me to test whether or not you have done the right thing, rather than you having to put things, for example, here in the top level app.jsx. So let's see Vite Storybook React, how to add Storybook to Vite. I can tell you this, Storybook gets very finicky from time to time. It brings a lot of dependencies to your machine. A lot of times you'll see very random errors. Let's hope it does not happen, but it could. Okay, I have my fresh Tailwind project here, which has just a revenue card rendered for now. If I go to localhost 5173, I see this revenue card right here. Let me add Storybook to this project, and let me show you how you can use Storybook to expose your components without rendering them in app.jsx. Specifically useful in use cases like these. One, when you want to impress someone like Dukan or an assignment, show them that you've used Storybook, where you've defined all of your components and variants that they can play with. And then number 2, useful for cases like these where you don't want to open source your complete code base, but a part of your code base. All right. I went to this guy right here, ran this command. You guys can go here as well. This seems like the docs to integrate Storybook to your React application, which seems like, okay, it is in JavaScript as well. Then create a .storybook/main.js file. Did it not create one for me already? It did not. Let me create a new folder called .storybook. Inside the .storybook folder, create a main.js file. Inside the main.js file, write down that I have all my stories either in /stories/something.mdx or /stories/something.stories.js. So anytime you create a component, now you also have to create or write stories for it so that they appear in Storybook. What is Storybook? A place where you can look at all of your components. And in this configuration file, I've mentioned that you can find all my stories logic. What are stories is a good first question, I guess. If you look at Storybook, it's basically something like this. In the end, you will get a UI like this, where you can click on all of these components. One of these components might be the card that we just created. Then the other one could be buttons, other one could be sidebar, so on and so forth. So you have to create stories, which basically represent, given my component, how should it render by default, when nothing is selected, when an input range is selected, so on and so forth. So you write all of that logic in what are called stories. And this is over here I mentioned that you can find all the stories either here or here. Whichever, like you can, they're like basically standard practices in code bases, whether you want a stories folder inside which you have another components folder. Inside which you will write all of your stories. For example, revenue card.stories.jsx. Here you can write all of your story logic. And if you are the UI engineer in this team, whenever you're creating a component like the revenue card, you are writing stories for it as well so that they finally appear in the storybook UI. All right, let's see. Configuration. Seems like I have to copy this. Again, just copied whatever storybook / main.js that they gave me. The bootstrapping of this is a pain, especially if you're doing this for a Next.js application. I know this because I've been trying to do this for this website, but haven't succeeded. But let's look at what is a story. This is how you can define a story. If you look at the code, what does it say? It says import button from button. This is the actual button logic that you've written. This is TypeScript. Feel free to ignore it. Like specifically this part right here. Export default meta. This part represents कि हाँ, this is how your primary button should finally appear on your story. So basically you have to write a lot of files like these anytime you're creating a component. If you are the UI engineer who has written the button component, along with writing that, you have to write another file that looks something like this, buttons.stories.js or JSX. Over there, ignore all the TypeScript stuff that you see here. You will import your real component and you will export a bunch of stories. Okay, bhai, this is the story for rendering a primary button. And then you can have 10 different stories here or 10 different exports here, one for a secondary button, one for an outlined button, so on and so forth. And that would finally appear here in the storybook UI. This you can open source for everyone to see. In fact, Razorpay design system. You will find a lot of these components for popular companies, which I think are also exposed via storybook only. Let's see. Yeah, so as you can see, this looks very similar to this UI, right? The storybook UI that you saw here, because Razorpay has also open sourced their design system, which as you saw was broken a bit, but these are all the components that they have on their, standard that you will see standard on Razorpay. They have open sourced it. Similarly, we can open source it for our website. And why is this cool? Because whoever is making the change will make the change and can test it right here. Okay, by progress bar by default appears like this. In this variant appears like this. When loading is happening, appearance like this, so on and so forth. You can add more variants. And then whoever is the non-open source engineer, the main contributor of that team, can integrate your components. It's a very nice way to, number one, let other people all around the world look at your design system. What is the design system? All your buttons, icons, all your smallest components that you have. And other reason it's useful is because you can, let other people work on this, test them. You can also test their code without integrating it in your React website. If you like it, eventually you can integrate in your React website. All right, cool. Let's see how to. So again, if you understand storybook, I'm not saying you can contribute here. I'm not even sure if they have issues. Yes, they do have a lot of issues. Don't spam the project. I'm not sure if they accept contributions or hire via open source, but feel free to look at it if you want. All right, let's see if we can integrate it in our website really quickly. I hope you understand what stories are now and why they're used. Let me copy over this. This is a lot of TypeScript logic, which I will get rid of. Revenue card.stories.ts. These are all types. All right, let's see if this works as expected. Let me give it the props here. Order count. I will post this code eventually so you can look at it if you want. I have written the story for my revenue card component. I have said my revenue card has one variant, the primary variant. I can call it, big amount variant and pass it a very big amount here. And then, have a different one. Okay, how does it appear on a small amount? Ideally, you should have logic in your component. Okay, if the amount is really big, then you should pad it and add a, dot at the very end. So these are like tests for your UI. You can create various variants and show people that this is how your UI would appear under various conditions. That's what's happening here. I've written the story. The only thing that's left is actually running it. Setup. Tailwind. Oh, seems like it's not very easy. Yeah, it seems like bootstrapping Tailwind is a long thing. I'm happy to do it live, but again, I should take a pause here and ask if you understand, if you want me to proceed, if I should go to MUI, if I should finish this. So let's do a poll and understand. What should I do next? Do you want to understand MUI now, or do you want me to continue doing this? Do you want to do Q&A? MUI. Okay, so we just want, to understand everything from the top, which makes sense. Let me again reiterate here. Okay, the first time you integrate Storybook to any library like Tailwind or MUI or even, Vite or Create React App or Next, it's a pain in the butt. But after you do it once is when your life becomes easy, because the one-time bootstrapping effort of putting Storybook in your project is really hard. That's why it has been in a lot of controversy recently as well. It's very verbose / bulk code base to bring into your code. All right, last one. People ask for MUI. This is another library. The reason this is not good is because CSS is dead. Harkirat of this video, bye CSS. Look at it. I basically talk through all the frameworks, which are the right ones, wrong ones. Here I tell, as you can see, the title says not lying, so I'm not lying. I basically share why MUI has been downgrading. Long story short is, if you look at the MUI docs, you will see they give you the components right out of the box, which means, for example, they give you this very nice accordion component. You can create a very pretty website using MUI. It's not like you cannot create the Dukan assignment, for example, using MUI. Someone already did, like someone posted the link. It was very close to what was needed. The problem with MUI is it's very hard to customize it. Tailwind mein, you are literally putting every class till the very end. You can always change it, add something else. You have that flexibility. You don't have that flexibility in MUI. It's what's called highly opinionated. It has its opinion as to how an accordion component should look like. It has given you that accordion component, you have to use it. It's very hard to customize it. Can you still customize it? Yes. What if I want to add a border here? What if it sort of exposes a few types of buttons? These 3 kinds of buttons. What if I want a very big button that looks a certain way? It's very hard for me to use the standard primitives that MUI provides me. So for example, MUI is pretty simple. Let me show how to bring it to your project, and then let me share the downsides. The way to bring it to your project is as simple as doing npm install MUI/material. These 2 libraries you don't need, but you can bring them. MUI sort of considers them to be the popular libraries to use if you're using MUI for styling. So feel free to bring all 3 to your project. And once you do, you can basically start importing components from it. So if I go to the button component, if I click on expand code, I can just get this button component from MUI and use it. For example, if I go to my revenue card and if I import button from MUI and then use it using whatever variant I want, and if I do an npm run dev, you will see I have a very nice material UI container, button in my project. It's pretty. That's not the problem. It is very nice. I can use a different variant like outlined, which also is a pretty button. The problem is it's very hard to customize it. If I want to, what was the Dukan assignment? It was this. If I want to create a button like this, it will be very hard. It will be very hard for me to create a button like this, which, what's the difference? The border radius. The border radius here is very big. Here is really small. There is no, if you look at all the versions of that it gives you, there is no version that has that border width. Border radius. Can you create it? Yes, you can override styles of this button. That's what these two libraries were for, that you got along with MUI. But the code becomes highly verbose. I talk about this again in that video that I'm talking about. I actually show how to customize a button on the ChatGPT UI, and it becomes really hard. So that's why MUI is not good. But is it good to bootstrap a quick hackathon project? Yes, because as you can see, it's not verbose at all. Did you see the amount of code I had to write to bring in a card? BG white, shadow, all of this. If I want to do it in MUI, all I have to do is this. I can get the card component from MUI, which, as the name suggests, will give you a card. And now if I look at it, I have a very nice card. What is a card in the end? It has some box shadow, has a white color. I had to write all of that manually in Tailwind like this. But if I'm using MUI, it's as simple as doing this. So if you don't want to worry about styles at all, and write CSS, and if you're okay with a default thing that Material UI provides you out of the box, then use it. This is great for hackathon projects. This is great for even, bigger projects. It becomes a problem when you have a designer in the team who has like very specific designs. For example, here, this button is very specific. So here is where you will see problems in using Material UI, because you don't own the code. The code that actually renders this button, you do not own it. That's present inside this card component that's part of the Material UI library. Where is this present? It's present in node modules /MUI. So you can't change this code. You can override it, but that becomes really ugly. That's why you should not use MUI. That's why everyone will tell you not to use MUI. That's the only reason. Okay, it's highly opinionated. Tailwind is not opinionated. You create opinionated components using Tailwind. So if you go to the dub.sh code that I was showing you, the dub.sh maintainer has created a button component which is highly opinionated. If you look at it, it has a few variants: primary, secondary, outline, success, danger. 5 different variants that they need. Danger means a red button, success means a green button, so on and so forth. But this guy still owns all of this logic. This button.tsx still exists inside the dub.sh code base, versus if I go here, this button code does not exist inside my code base anymore. I cannot customize it. I cannot change it if I need a green button, blue button, yellow button, whatever. So in the end, you use libraries like Tailwind, and more specifically, eventually you will see Radix and ShadCN to create opinionated components using unopinionated libraries. That's the nirvana right now. Will it change in the future? God knows, maybe. But what is the most effective thing being used in, projects created by people who work at Vercel, literally the company, or used to work at Vercel, the company that created Next.js? It is Tailwind, ShadCN, Radix. That's the popular choice. What does the file structure look like? File structure looks like you create a UI library of your own. This is similar to creating this MUI that you saw on your own. You are creating a component library which has, an avatar component, a background component, a badge component, so on and so forth. But you still own this code base, so you can change it in the future if you want to. People keep saying we have come full circle, because when there were no libraries, what would people do? People would search button, pretty CSS. This is literally how I have searched, when I was in college. How do I create a simple, cool looking button? And I would copy this code and then bring it on my code base. Eventually Bootstrap came. Then a bunch of these libraries came, and people started using these libraries out of the box. Eventually realized that we want to own the code base. And now we're back at square one, where we're copying code base from the internet, bringing it on our code, and then customizing it according to our needs. All right. that's it for how CSS is done in 2024. Now happy to answer questions. We covered Tailwind, we covered Storybook, we covered MUI. We did not cover Radix and Shadcn, but happy to cover it tomorrow offline video. I think we can start TypeScript tomorrow. All right. Bunch of questions. Tough lag raha hai. Was this tough? I mean, this could be, and so I'm happy to stay back. 1 second. How was the class? Fast, slow, perfect? Don't know. Launch. All right. Sir, my project got 25K for this. Looks pretty good. 29% fast. That's a lot of fast. So, and a bunch of don't knows as well. So, whoever found it slow and perfect, which is 50% of the audience today, feel free to drop off. Everyone else, stay back. Let's talk through what's up. And congratulations to whoever got this. There is no proper structure in today's class. Are you going to explain more in the future lecture? Yeah, unfortunately, there is no structure to teaching CSS other than, building projects. I do agree to it. But if you look at the last, I think my owner is here, guys. 1 second.
कैमरा भी होता है। हाँ, ये किस लिए?
अच्छी क्वालिटी की वीडियो कॉल जब होती है तो क्वालिटी अच्छी है।
बेटे को भेजूंगा कभी देख के जाएगा। ठीक, और ये किस लिए रखा है?
ये जूतों ले रखा है, अंदर तो बाहर जूते
शूज लेके बनवाया ना या बनवाया? दरवाजे में लगाओ। क्या चीज़? नमस्ते जी, चाबी दे दी और इनको फ़ोन नंबर दे दो हमारा, कभी फ़ोन कर। ठीक है, फ़ोन नंबर डायरेक्ट हो जाएगी ना कभी।
Oh God. Sorry about that. Go to dev mode in Figma. Okay, makes sense. A difference between MUI and Bootstrap. Oh, they're different. Again, go to the video that I have on YouTube. It answers this question exactly. Create an offline video for Dukan assignment. Sure. I'll just create the assignment and then take you through the code, I guess. Again, feel free to drop off if you were in the category that understood everything. Let me look at more actionable questions if you have, guys, as to what was difficult. How can do we need more practice? Do we need to do this again? Is it bad if I look at Tailwind docs regularly? No, you should. I do it as well. Here, can you teach 10 stack React router, React query? I'll probably cover React query. I haven't looked at 10 stack React router. What's the common max width size given so our divs don't enlarge? Don't understand that question. How to handle font sizes in different screen size? Oh, good question. There are two ways you can do it. You can put conditional logic, or you can use something called the viewport. Happy to discuss it in a more detailed video, or just Google it. Why don't you use extension Tailwind CSS? I'll add that. I would suggest everyone to add it as well. You can basically add an extension here. Let me share screen. If you want to quickly look at Tailwind styles and get some suggestions, you can add is this the one? Yeah, Tailwind CSS IntelliSense, and that will make your life slightly easier when you're writing this code. For example, now you can see colors here, and if I write bg dash, as you can see, it gives me a lot of suggestions. So feel free to add this to Visual Studio Code. It will make practice slightly easier. Can we complete a full front-end project with the knowledge we have? Let's do that tomorrow. Perfect. That's a good suggestion. Tomorrow, let's build a full application. Maybe not this Dukan application that has too many parts, but a simple to-do application, a sign-up page, a sign-in page, making the user log in. Let's do basically a practice sort of a call tomorrow, similar to the one we did before, in which we understood a to-do application backend. Let's do the front end for it and then do the backend for it again, and then go from there. Let's see. Can we use Tailwind and Movie in the same project? Yes, but you shouldn't. That's sort of an anti-pattern. Yeah, you should pick one. If you want to use multiple libraries, the way to do that is, again, answered in the same video. But the way to do that is to use Tailwind and Radix, which is unopinionated libraries and unstyled components. Go to the video that I talked about. Basically answers this question in more depth. Sabu, I need to practice more. Yeah, let's do a full project tomorrow, I guess. Pro frontend is boring. Couldn't agree more, sir. Okay. Any more questions related to... So I have two questions first for you guys. Was it difficult or was it ke theek hai ye to pata hi tha? How was the class? Too difficult / too fast? Fairly simple top level stuff. It was just unstructured. Need more practice. Because this happened in the last cohort as well. Okay, this Tailwind class was very all over the place. So I'm unsure what the reason for this is. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Most people selected it was unstructured. Then people said this was fairly simple top level stuff. And then 10% thought it was difficult. So that makes me a little more happy. So at least it's not difficult. It's just we could do this ourselves. Like if you're looking at the docs, we can do it. Makes sense. So let's do practice tomorrow. So do you want more advanced stuff then? Sorry, I'm just asking questions here to make sure we structure classes better. Yeah, let me ask, what should we do tomorrow? What should we do tomorrow? Do an end-to-end project. Start TypeScript / backend. Don't know. All right. Do an end-to-end project. Okay, great. Sounds good. What project should we do? Should we do a simple Paytm application or should we do a to-do application? We need to keep it small and scoped. What application should we do tomorrow? Paytm, simple transactions, front end and back end, and then to-do application, front end and back end, and then e-commerce site. Paytm. All right, Paytm it is. Cool, guys. So tomorrow, let's kick things off. We will create a simple Paytm application which lets you sign up, sign in. We'll create an endpoint that gives you a dummy balance, and then you will be allowed to send other people money, receive people from money from other people, so on and so forth. Let's do that tomorrow. All right. Cool. Let me open chat. Any questions related to the class today? Seems like it was a little too easy, so there are no questions, just high level stuff. But again, opening chat. We go from the top. Let me go from the bottom. Use query ? What is there a question there? What do you mean by that? Is there some template for viewports we should remember? Unsure if I understand this question also. Offline video for Dukan sidebar. Sure. That's a good idea. That's like, I don't want to build the whole application, but I can definitely build the sidebar because that's the difficult bit. Let me write this down. Offline video for Dukan sidebar. Please teach in a structured way. Boring is cool as long as it wasn't difficult. If this was difficult, then I would have been a little weird. Why did you comb your hair? Good question. I should do that. What are the extensions that you have in VS Code? I don't have many because I don't use VS Code other than for classes, and this is also a new laptop, so here I probably don't have anything. Let's see. How can you look at all the extensions you have installed? I only have this. I have nothing else. Tomorrow कुछ develop करेंगे. Tomorrow we'll do Paytm. Are we going to cover regex in JS? Probably not. Why do you need to cover regex in JS? Like, I mean, it's not a JS concept. It's like common, no, but it's like very easily Googleable if you want to know. Kanban board tomorrow. Oof. We could do it. The problem with this is, it's what you want is very close to that is part of 1 to 100 when we'll be doing Zapier. So maybe just wait for 1 to 100. Next week's syllabus is backend again. So probably the Open API spec. Basically backend heavy. Let's get away from front end. So let's try to complete we might have to do TypeScript. We can probably do TypeScript in an offline video, and then let's get back into backend next week. Prerequisites for tomorrow's video: Express, Mongoose, React, and Tailwind are prerequisites. Jest lecture and React testing library lecture. Sure, I can do it in an offline video. Testing lecture offline. How do you get better at CSS? Right now it's a horror movie. Any helpful assignments? What do you mean get better at CSS? Do you mean get better at design? Because in the end, as a developer, you just have to copy over CSS from a Figma file. So you don't have to get better at CSS. You have to get better at copying CSS, unless you want to be a designer, in which case, I have not the best person to ask this question. Should front-end engineer learn UI UX? No. All right. What is vanilla CSS? Basically using CSS without any framework is what's called vanilla CSS. Opening chat again. I think there's a reason why creating animation in MUI is comparatively difficult as compared to normal CSS. What do you mean creating an animation in MUI? Is there any problem if I copy styling code from internet as long as I understand customize it? Yeah, it's fine, but if you copy over a lot of different styles of CSS from the internet, your application, you'll never see that in a big project. Why? Because you want to keep everything consistent. So even if you find styles somewhere else, you should convert them to Tailwind and then you use them in your project rather than copying over blind raw CSS from someplace else. That's the only high level thing. Baki, use whatever you want as long as you understand it. Interview tips, because I just know things and build small project. Then first learn to build a big project. There's no tip as such that can help you if you can't build a project right now, right? I have mentioned you in my Twitter post OTP assignment. Please check it at the time. I will check it out. Also use Mantine instead of using MUI. All right. Can we go through week 7 assignments? They were tough. Tomorrow, we could do that as well, but they're front end heavy. So let me do a poll one more time. We could do that as well, if I'm being honest. What do we do tomorrow? Assignments from week 7. Paytm. Again, don't select Paytm because it's flashy. We will either way do Paytm later on. So like, if you feel you don't understand week 7 assignments, then select that. It's bang on 50-50. Okay, I'll do a poll in a public class and like on Discord, and we'll go from there. All right. Storybook was hard. Yeah, did not want to cover this for the same reason. It still will take a long time for you to understand, like even set it up in a project. All right. Not late to class, but log and updating variable. How to log an updating variable, increase on click after set timeout. How to log an increasing variable. Unsure if I understand your question, but is it this? Button on click. Count. Is this what you mean? You mean something like this, or something else? Or I guess you have to increase the. Is this what you mean, or something else? Can we complete a full stack project with the knowledge we have? Yes. I've grasped most concepts now, but when it comes to coding, I feel a little stuck. Yeah, that's why let's do a project tomorrow. All right. OTP logic assignment I can alag se cover in a video if you want. Although if you know refs, it shouldn't have been too difficult. That was actually a fairly simple assignment if you've gone through the use refs video. OTP assignment offline video. All right. When to use TSX instead of JSX? When we get to TypeScript, we should use TSX. Please recap Tailwind installation process. And in Tailwind, can we position elements and use GSAP library with that? What is the GSAP library? You can position elements however you want. What is the GSAP library? You can, it's an animation library. You can use it in React. There's nothing related to Tailwind in it. And specifically the way to install Tailwind, the thing that you just asked, is go to docs here, go to installation. And based on the framework that you're using, which in our case was Vite, just follow all the steps here top to bottom and you should be good. All right. By Figma pe login karo, then you'll be able to see the styles. Makes a lot of sense. Can we do a complete full front end? Okay, answer that. Okay, let's do one more round, guys. Can you give practice React project for beginners in Tailwind? You just look at week 7 assignments that you can do the same in Tailwind. Yeah, specifically like the color change one is a good example here for something to do in Tailwind. Feeling a little difficult to understand code flow? Start with smaller projects, break it down. Tomorrow, let's break down everything into like very small files, and that will hopefully help. Can you give a React Tailwind? Okay, answered that. How to find standard recommended way to do things in front end? I always find it difficult to do anything full screen pixel perfect. For example, less body content, make it look footer weird, or user have different zoom level on mobile device, which you cannot control. Yeah, I mean, you cannot control zoom if the person is zooming in on mobile. That's probably every website breaks there. But other than that, your app needs to be responsive, assuming the user isn't doing shady things. And the way to do that, high level, is to think the breakpoints that we saw today. Based on what breakpoint you're on, you need to render 3 items in a row or a single item in a row. The other thing you do fairly commonly there is the button size changed on a mobile device. If you're on a mobile device, the button is slightly smaller. If you're on a very big monitor like I have here, then the button needs to be bigger. Things like these. Tailwind lets you do all of that. You just need to have a lot of conditional breakpoint logic in your code. What is the actual difference between question mark and using an SVG of an icon? Oh, icon had like I'm assuming / hoping the icon has some round design around it. You can create that in HTML. You don't have to. You can use question mark and then create a simple border around it and use it. But like for complex things like a home icon, you can't do that using the keyboard, right? So yeah, that's the only reason. For question mark, you can just use question mark. What is anti-pattern? Oh, anti-pattern means something that you shouldn't do, something that seems like is a good pattern but is a bad pattern. So that's what anti-pattern means. Also, class where you give short assignment and follow with answer is great for learning. I think that was missing from the current class. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that tomorrow. Is it necessary to be really good at CSS? Not really. You should be able to copy designs end to end, which means you should be able to copy CSS from a Figma file over to convert it into Tailwind and paste it in your React code. Yes, but you don't have to understand design yourself, thankfully, for now at least. Is it necessary? Okay, answer that. Does adding non-primitive data dependency array in username use callback really optimize application? Does adding a non-primitive data dependency in array in use memo use callback really optimize the application? Non-primitive data dependency. I am unsure if I understand this. Non-primitive data dependency. When you say non-primitive, do you mean a state variable? You mean not a normal function outside the class, or do you mean something else? High level, on web, a stateful dependency or a non-stateful dependency, either way, a primitive variable, adding them as a dependency, you don't see any change. On a mobile device you do. Yeah, it's high level. Answer that. Week 7 assignments, offline video, and tomorrow end to end. We can do tomorrow end to end. Week 7 there were a lot of assignments. I did not plan to do an offline video for it, but since you guys are pushing, let me do at least the difficult ones. Can you give React practice, Tailwind practice projects for beginners? So, if you go to week 7 assignments, this one is a good assignment because you need to understand what sort of colors you need to store in the state variable using Tailwind. So creating something like this, clicking on a button changes the background. This is also a pretty good assignment if I'm being honest. Create a card component. Now you can, create circular avatars. This is similar to the thing that you saw on the Tailwind CSS website, right? A card component which has a person's avatar and all that jazz. So basically I'm hoping creating this, given you already have this, is pretty simple. That's a good assignment. Let's see if there's another good one here. None of the other ones are related to Tailwind as such, but these two are definitely, you'd see the benefits of using Tailwind here. Should I start building projects or should I wait until next year? You should start building projects. Can you give React Tailwind project? Answer that. What else to cover in React? What's left to cover? We need to add TypeScript to it. Maybe custom hooks is one thing I'm missing, which I put an offline video for, from the last cohort. So yeah, I guess that's it. Unless I'm missing something here. We've done state management, we've done components, props, rendering, Tailwind, we've also done. Yeah, I think we can dive to next JS after this. Anti-pattern I answered. Anything that's basically a bad pattern is what's called an anti-pattern. Make a hour-long video on Storybook. It's a good thing to know. Storybook video. I will not commit, but I will try. Check this out, please. Arkiyad hosted it on Product Hunt. It came on top 20 of the day. Let's see. Authify for developers. Robust authentication system designed to meet specific apps for developers. What does it do again? I don't want to log in here, but is it like Auth? Is it like Clerk or something else? Can you cover aggregation pipelines in MongoDB? Sure. No one does aggregation pipelines in MongoDB, but this will be part of 0 to 100, but we won't do it using MongoDB. We'll probably do it using Kafka or some better aggregation framework and not MongoDB. Upload cohort 1 Tailwind video. I will do that. It's the same as what we've done today. Only thing is we write some YouTube code there, try to copy over the front end of YouTube. What do you mean copy CSS from Figma? Good question. If I go to Dukan's Figma that this guy posted, here, if you log in, so let me log in really quickly. Let me share my screen again. You can actually click on a specific section, for example here, and actually look at the CSS. For example, here it says this has ignore the width and height. For example, the border here looks like this, or the padding for this specific element is this. So you can just copy it over whenever you're creating, for example, a card. If I go to this card, you can see it has width, height. Ignore those, of course. The width and height will be dynamic, but things like the colors, the font size, the font weight, things like these, you can copy over from here onto your website. So a lot of front-end development is just copying over styles from a Figma file. All right. Is it necessary to get really good at CSS UI design? As I said, no. Anti-pattern answered. What do you mean by CSS Figma file? Answer that. Tailwind video will upload. All right, that answers it. Tomorrow, let's go slow and make you guys code. So I'll basically do it like the to-do class. I'll ask you to code something and then give you guys 5 minutes to code it, and then I'll code it myself and slowly try to build up a Paytm application. Let's try that tomorrow. All right, let's call it for today. Thank you for joining. A little haphazard of a class, but that's how Tailwind classes are. I'm not too surprised. A bunch of questions. Let's see. I was trying to make a CyberClick second testing website. CyberClick second testing website was unable to get the updated variable. CyberClick, acha, click per second website. Acha. Okay, I get what you mean. You're creating a website in which you click a lot, so you can count the number of clicks that a person has done. What you're probably missing is, or doing wrong is this. You should do this. Whatever is your handler for, window.on key press. You should just do this instead of doing this. Basically, put in a function here. You're probably doing this, which is causing a race condition if someone clicks very quickly. Yeah, we've covered this before, but high level, this is usually the right way to update state variables. In your case, I'm not even sure if updating a state variable is the right idea. You should probably use a ref and do a ref dot current ++ because it's happening so often, the clicking. But I think this should solve your solution, your problem if you're facing issues in the. Oh, where did Zoom go? Oh, I was not sharing, was I? My bad. Basically, I was saying, do this instead of doing this. That's probably what's causing the issue for you. Push the code. Okay, let me do that. This is 8.1, right? All right. How desktop applications are developed for Windows or Mac? If you want to use, there are multiple ways. Most easiest way is just Google Electron. Lets you convert like React applications over to a native app. When the user hits a URL, does the first request go to Node Express server or directs to the front page in front end? Okay, so fundamentals are a little unclear if you're asking this question. You host your front end and your back end separately, unless you're using Next or you're hosting them together. Usually, front end separate server, back end separate server. So if you go to your URL bar and paste something, request is going to your front end server to get your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. This changes completely if you use Next.js or server side rendering. But if you're using simple React and simple Express, which is something we've learned until now, you send a request to your front end server, get back the response or the data for that. And once you get that data, you start to hit your backend server afterwards. Alrighty, let's call it. I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye bye.